Hello, and welcome to Virtual Science Saturday, part of Hagley from Home. I'm Leanne, and this week's topic is Third Rock from the Sun. We're going to be talking about Earth science, and specifically the 4 spheres of Earth that make up the entire Earth system. And then, because this year is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, we're going to be talking about how humans impact the Earth, and some things that you and I can do at home to make our impact a little bit better. Your engineering activity this week is to build an eco-brick. You might not have ever heard of this before, but we're going to use some old plastic that we have lying around the house and make something that we can use as a building material. Today's topic is called Third Rock from the Sun. Do you know why that is? It's because the Earth is the third planet from the Sun, and it is made of rocks and has a rocky surface, just like the other first 4 planets. There are many things about the Earth that make it special, but one of the most special things about Earth is that it can sustain life. We haven't found life on any other living planet. And so why is that exactly? Well, the Earth is just far enough away from the Sun for water to be in a liquid form most of the time. You'll find ice at the poles or vapor in the air, but we are also able to find liquid water abundantly on the surface of the Earth. There are a couple other cool things about the Earth that make living on it possible. One of those things is the shape, and the other is the tilt. A sphere is a 3-dimensional round object. The Earth isn't a perfect sphere, but it's close enough. And because of this shape, the sunlight hits the Earth unevenly, making the equator, center part of the Earth, warmer than the poles. That's why you find hot tropical rainforests around the equator and ice at the poles. The Earth is tilted at 23.5 degrees. So instead of being straight up and down, it has an angle like this. So when the Earth revolves around the Sun, sometimes the Earth is tilting away from the Sun, sometimes towards the Sun. This is the reason for the seasons. If you're in the Northern Hemisphere, North America for example, the Earth is tilted towards the Sun between the months of June and September. We call this summer. And it is tilted away from the Sun between December and March. We call that winter. If you live in the Southern Hemisphere, then the solstices are reversed so that the summer begins in December and winter begins in June. Hard to imagine for us folks in the North. Okay, so we looked at the Earth in relation to the Sun. We looked at its shape and how that impacts the scattering of light across its surface and its tilt. All of these factors impact the cycles and systems on Earth. What do I mean by that? Well, I'll show you. There are 4 main components of Earth that are basically systems, things that have interconnected parts that all work together to form a function. So the 4 are the Earth, the air, the water, and the living things. Each one of these has its own special name. So let's look at each one of these words, starting with the lithosphere. The lithosphere is the rigid outer part of Earth's surface consisting of the crust and upper mantle. The Earth has 4 main layers, and the crust and upper mantle are the very topmost layer and this the very top of the second layer. I'm going to show you with an example what that looks like. Let's pretend the Earth is like this apple. The Earth has layers, and let's say this middle here, this seed of the apple, is the iron inner core of the Earth. It's solid and a metal. Then around the outside is actually a liquid iron core. And then there's something called the mantle in between. And then right on the edge, right what the skin on this apple would be, is the crust of the Earth. That's the part that we live on. All the mountains and valleys and rivers, animals, and even the caves, all the way down through the crust is what we live on. It's very, very tiny compared to the rest of the Earth. So the lithosphere is all of the rocks and mountains and land on Earth. If you take away the oceans, all of the ocean floor is part of the lithosphere as well. If you see lava coming out of a volcano, that's the upper part of the mantle that I talked about. It's a liquid form of rock. Once it comes out of the volcano, it solidifies into new land. All of this land is broken up into giant plates. Have you ever seen ice breaking up on the surface of a lake? It's kind of like that. As you can see in this picture, the plates are colored in blue, purple, yellow, and there are several large plates that cover the Earth's surface. Sometimes when 2 plates collide, they create mountains. They can also create other volcanoes, or they can create earthquakes by sliding past each other. The rocks that move around the Earth go through a cycle called the rock cycle. You'll have brand new rocks, rocks that have been transformed by weathering, and rocks that have been transformed by heat and pressure. And all of those different kinds make up what we see around us. We looked below the Earth's surface, now let's look above it. The atmosphere is the layers of gases that surround the Earth. We might call it the air that we breathe. The atmosphere is made up of a mixture of different gases. The gases in the atmosphere are too small for us to see with our eyes, but if we could see them, they might look something like these beans, different sizes and types, but they would be all spread out, and we wouldn't be able to see them all clumped together like this. What's one of the most important gases we find in the atmosphere that life needs to survive? Did you say oxygen? Because that's correct. Remember how we talked about how the sunlight hits the Earth more at the equator than at the poles? Well, this affects the atmosphere as well. The uneven heating causes the air to move around in giant cycles. This causes short-term weather and long-term climate patterns on Earth. Since we were just talking about the atmosphere, let's talk about the hydrosphere. The hydrosphere is where all the water on Earth is, whether that's in the atmosphere, on the surface, or underground. The atmosphere is not a very large sink for water, meaning that there's not a lot there, but we can see it. Do you know what structures in the sky are actually water vapor? That's right, clouds. Clouds hold water, and then when they get too heavy and have too much water in them, then it falls as precipitation. When that precipitation falls on land, it then either runs into a river and then out into the sea, or it goes into the ground, or a plant might soak it up and then release it back into the air through its leaves. All of these steps are part of the water cycle, and all of the water on Earth in some way or another ends up in one stage of the water cycle. Next time you're outside, take a look around and see how many different ways you can see the water cycle. Do you see rain coming from the sky? Do you see a pond or a lake? Do you see a small creek running by? Take notice and see if you can count how many different ways you can see water in the space around you. The biosphere includes all of the areas on Earth that living things occupy. This could be the sky, the ground, underground, the ocean, or any other body of water. Life on Earth is what separates our planet from any other that we've found so far, and it's existed on the planet for billions of years. Life can be found in the deepest parts of the ocean, under the ice in Antarctica, or even inside volcanoes. Not all living things are able to be seen with the eye. Some living things are only one cell big. We can see cells under microscopes, but not with our eyes. All of the living things on Earth interact with each other, and many depend on each other. Plants need bacteria to break down the soil so they can access the nutrients, and bacteria feed off of the leaves that fall from the trees. When you look at the Earth, everything is interconnected. Here I am in my local park, and I'm looking at all the different spheres all at once. You can tell by my hair blowing around that it's pretty windy today. That's the atmosphere. There's probably a cold front moving in. Well, I'm also seeing here behind me is the pond, and in the back of the pond there you can see a beaver dam. And so you can see some of how the life is intertwined here. The water provides shelter and nutrients for the animals and plants. The animals and plants in turn use the water and put it back into the atmosphere. And on this side we can see rocks exposed, part of the lithosphere. The litho, hydro, atmos, and biosphere are all influenced in some ways by the others. That's why when we think about how humans affect the planet, it's not just one part of the Earth we're impacting, it's everything. In the late 1700s, there was something called the Industrial Revolution. Instead of making products like cloth called textiles at home and small shops, machines have been invented to make production much faster and efficient. Hagley was built in the early 1800s during this Industrial Revolution. Anyway, soon people started using coal to power steam engines, and factories were burning tons of it by the late 1800s. It's around this time, the late 1800s, early 1900s, that people started noticing that burning all of this coal was great for product making, but not so great for the environment or people's health. Coal soot was covering trees, statues, and buildings, and people were breathing it in. Not only that, but in the mid-1900s, people started noticing that waterways were being polluted as well. People were getting fed up with the amount of pollution in the air and water, and they started protesting around the world, but especially in the United States. In 1969, a senator from Wisconsin named Gaylord Nelson knew about a terrible oil spill that happened off the coast of California and hated to think of the environmental impact. Around the same time, people all around the U.S. had been protesting the Vietnam War, especially college students. The senator decided to appeal to that energy and give another cause for them to fight for: the environment. And so, on April 22, 1970, after much organization, Senator Nelson deemed this the first Earth Day. 20 million Americans, 10% of the entire United States population, took to the streets and performed protests and demonstrations to get the attention of the U.S. government to enact regulations against polluting the environment. By the end of 1970, the U.S. government had created the Environmental Protection Agency and passed the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, and the Endangered Species Act. Every year afterwards, people have continued to celebrate Earth Day and spread awareness about how people's actions affect the environment. Although Earth Day was a success in 1970 and has continued on to become a global movement since then, we still have lots of work to do. Humans are still polluting the air, the water, and creating new materials that never go away in the environment. The one thing we're going to focus on today is plastic. We see plastic just about everywhere. Our water bottles are made from it, our chairs, the fibers that make up synthetic materials. This plastic finds its way into the environment and affects every single sphere, the biosphere especially. And even here at the park, unfortunately, we can still find plastic pollution. I'm on the banks and I'm pretty far away from the parking lot, a good 5-minute walk, and I'm seeing some plastic here on the edge of this pond. One of the ways that we can reduce our plastic pollution is by making an eco-brick. It stores plastic inside of a drinking bottle and makes a building material out of it. By repurposing plastic this way, it won't make it into the environment. So we're going to build our own eco-bricks together. And for that, you're going to need a plastic bottle. This one's a 2-liter, but you can use a 20-ounce or the water bottles you use at home. If you are going to build something like a table, then you're going to want to use all of the same size bottles generally because it's easier to put it together that way. The other thing you're going to need are some soft plastics. And what I mean are generally things that are wrapping things. Like here I have apples, and this plastic bag is not recyclable in a normal recycling bin, and you have to take it to a special recycling bin, say at the grocery store. They'll usually take it. Same with plastic shopping bags. Those are the similar type of soft plastic. And even bread is wrapped not only in this one, but the bread itself is wrapped in its own plastic as well. So I can use both of those pieces of plastic in my eco-brick. So to build your eco-brick, you're going to need not only your plastic bottle, but also something to shove the other soft plastic down into the bottom of the bottle, because it's not going to be sturdy enough if there are a lot of air pockets inside the bottle. So I'm going to start. I have this piece of plastic, so just start like this, and I'll show you how I use my stick. And just shove it in there. Hagley is located in Wilmington, Delaware. If you happen to be local to this area, one of the places that you can drop off your eco-brick is at Alapocus Run State Park. They have an initiative where they're going to build a shed out of all eco-bricks. So far, they have collected over 300 eco-bricks from various partners in the community. They aren't collecting them right now, but they will resume soon, and then they'll start building the shed later this year. Thank you for joining me for Virtual Science Saturday, part of Hagley from Home. If you made an eco-brick, don't forget to take a picture or video and upload it to social media and tag us using #HagleyFromHome or hashtag HagleySciSat. If you would like to see more Hagley from Home content, please log on to our website, www.hagley.org.